She was always there, just out of sight, just beyond reach. A flicker of movement in the corner of his eye, like the past refusing to be forgotten. The rattle of a dying engine echoed through the lot, its wheezing cough bouncing off the rusted-out fence like a warning. Eli shut off the ignition and sat still, hands on the steering wheel of his beat-up '97 Corolla, the kind of car that smelled like old vinyl and unshed tears. He took a breath. This was it. New start number 4, maybe 5th. He'd lost count after Tucson. The mechanic shop was smaller than he expected. Grant's Auto Repair was hand-painted in flaking red on a warped sign, half swallowed by vines. A row of busted cars sat out front like war victims waiting for miracles. The garage door was open, revealing shadows and sparks. Someone was welding, cursing, and humming a Johnny Cash song all at once. Eli stepped out. Dust crunched beneath his boots. He tugged his backpack over his shoulder and approached the door like it might close on him any second. "Looking for work?" came a voice, gravelly, tired. Behind a curtain of engine smoke, a man emerged. Late 50s, barrel-chested, with forearms like tree trunks and oil in every wrinkle of his hands. "Yes, sir," Eli said. "Name's Eli Rourke. I fix engines, mostly American, but I'm decent with imports too." The man wiped his hands on a rag that didn't look much cleaner than his coveralls. "Grant, you any good, Eli Rourke?" "I'm not fast," Eli said honestly, "but I don't guess I've ever had a car come back worse than it came in." Grant stared at him for a long beat, then tossed him a rag. "Wrenches over there. Chevy Malibu. Brake calipers are sticking. Let's see if you're worth the oil." He was halfway through the repair when he noticed it. Movement in the corner of his eye, behind the row of tires stacked like tombstones. A flick of fur. Then nothing. An hour passed. He was tightening the last bolt when he heard it. A soft, broken meow, like a throat that hadn't known kindness in a long time. Eli stood up and stepped around the tires. She was there, thin, dirty, one ear torn like she'd lost a fight no one saw. A pale tabby with flecks of rust-colored fur and a limp in her back leg. "Hey," he whispered, kneeling slowly. "You okay?" The cat didn't run. She just stared, like she was sizing him up too. Eli reached into his bag and pulled out the last half of his sandwich. He hesitated, then laid it gently on the ground. Her eyes flicked from the sandwich to his face. Then, warily, she limped forward and ate. That was the moment Grant saw them. "The hell do you think this is?" Grant barked, storming over. "You feeding strays now? On my damn property?" "She's hurt," Eli said quietly, standing. "Didn't think you'd mind." "Well, I do. I run a shop, not a damn animal shelter. Pack your stuff, you're done." Eli didn't argue. He just nodded, scooped up his bag, gave the cat one last glance and walked out into the fading light. But just minutes later, everything changed. Grant stood frozen, glaring at the retreating figure of Eli as he disappeared into the amber twilight. The cat, still crouched where Eli had left her, licked crumbs from the concrete, her limp now more noticeable in the silence that followed. "Stupid kid," Grant muttered, getting soft over a stray. But something in his voice lacked conviction. He turned to head back inside when he heard it, a sharp yowl, not from pain, but insistence. The cat had darted toward a car parked by the garage bay, her injured leg dragging behind her. She pawed furiously at the front tire of a black SUV, her claws clinking against metal. "Hey!" Grant shouted, stepping forward. "Get out of there!" But she didn't move. Instead, she ducked underneath the vehicle, yowling louder now, as if trying to speak. Grant bent down, grumbling as his knees popped in protest. He caught a flash of Loki's eye, wide, alert, locked onto something deeper under the engine. Following her gaze, Grant squinted, then frowned. A fine line of fluid was trickling across the concrete. Brake fluid. He reached for his flashlight, the irritation in his chest slowly twisting into something colder. He slid onto the floor, flashlight in hand, and followed the trail beneath the SUV. The brake line near the rear axle had nearly rotted through, something no one had noticed. A weak patch bulged dangerously, ready to burst with one good press of the pedal. Grant sat up, staring at the SUV as if it had insulted him. That vehicle had been signed off. It was supposed to go back to the customer in the morning. One drive down a steep hill, and it would have been a headline. The cat emerged slowly from beneath the SUV, tail flicking, her torn ear twitching. Grant looked at her, really looked this time. "Damn," he whispered. Eli hadn't made it far. He was sitting on the curb 2 blocks down, watching the horizon darken into navy, wondering if he should call his cousin in Nevada or just sleep in the car again. His breath fogged the air, even though it wasn't that cold. A pair of headlights approached, and for a moment he stood, thinking it might be a cop, ready to move him along. But the truck slowed. Grant leaned out the window, engine idling. "Get in." Eli hesitated. "You fired me." Grant scratched his temple. "I made a mistake." A long pause. "She saved the car," Grant added, jerking his thumb backward. "Or maybe saved someone's life. Damn cat limped right into the shop like she owned the place." Eli cracked a dry smile. "Her name's Loki." Grant snorted. "Figures. Hop in. Got some kibble in the office. And a leak to fix." Eli slid into the passenger seat, not saying thank you, but feeling it all the same. Back at the garage, Loki sat perched on the workbench now, tail curled around her feet, watching them both like a queen whose loyalty had to be earned. The shop was quiet after dark. The air smelled like warm steel and old coffee, the kind of silence that only existed after hours, when tools were hung, engines silenced, and the world outside had stopped needing things. Eli stood beside the SUV, examining the worn brake line under the flickering garage light. "You want to go ahead and say it?" he asked without looking up. Grant crossed his arms. "Say what?" "That you were wrong." Grant grunted. "Already did. Once." "Yeah, but that one was for the cat." "Still counts." Eli smirked. It was the first real smile he'd cracked in weeks. He slid under the car again, twisting the flashlight to get a better angle. "Who worked on this last?" Grant's tone turned defensive. "It was Dylan. Kid's got good instincts, but he rushes." Eli nodded. "I'll redo the lines. No charge." "You're not getting paid yet anyway," Grant said, leaning against the wall. "That'll depend on whether you plan on turning this into a rescue center." At that, both men glanced toward the back of the garage. Loki was curled on top of an unopened box of spark plugs, one paw tucked beneath her chest, eyes half closed but always watching. Someone, Grant, had placed a paper towel under a chipped ceramic bowl, now holding tuna. It was already half gone. "She chose the plugs," Eli said. "Can't blame her. They're warm from the welding station." "She's got taste," Grant muttered. A silence fell between them again, but this time it felt less heavy. The sound of Eli's ratchet echoed softly under the car. Loki flicked her tail lazily, as if she was giving her silent approval. Grant rubbed the back of his neck. "You said you're new to town." "Couple weeks," Eli replied. "Came in looking for steady work. Got tired of chasing it all over the country." "You got people here?" Eli hesitated. "Nah." "You running from something?" Another pause. "Not anymore." Grant didn't push. He just nodded, the kind of nod that said, "I get it," even if he didn't say the words. After a while, Eli rolled out from under the car. "Brake lines are patched, should be safe now, but that customer needs to know they're on borrowed time." "I'll handle it." The two men stood there a moment longer, beneath the buzz of a dying fluorescent bulb, beneath the eyes of a stray cat who had already started changing both their lives. The morning sun bled through the garage windows in streaks of gold, lighting the dust in the air like floating ash. It was the kind of morning where nothing in the world was quite awake yet, except maybe the cat. Loki was already on the counter when Eli arrived, head high, tail wrapped neatly around her front paws, her torn ear giving her an air of rough royalty. She blinked slowly at him, as if to say, "You're late." Eli held up a hand in mock apology. "Sorry, Your Highness. The bus was early, I wasn't." He poured a little water into her dish and unwrapped a fresh packet of tuna. Loki didn't move toward it immediately, just gave him one of those unreadable cat stares that made him feel both judged and approved of in the same moment. Grant was already out back, grumbling over something with the tow truck driver. Eli took the quiet moment to breathe in the shop. It felt different now, less temporary. A calendar from 2016 still hung on the wall, never flipped past March. A cracked plastic radio buzzed quietly with a country station, and someone had left a thermos of black coffee half full by the phone. There was a kind of rhythm to it, like this place had been holding its breath for years, waiting for something, or someone, to stir it back to life. Loki stretched, hopped off the counter, and followed Eli toward the Malibu. She didn't walk so much as glide with a slight limp, tail high, like a little shadow learning to trust the light. "You ever work with a partner?" Eli asked her casually. Loki stopped, sneezed, and flicked her tail. "I'll take that as a no." By mid-morning, the shop was buzzing. A minivan came in with a radiator that had exploded like a soda can in the sun. The mother driving it had two kids in the back seat and worry written all over her face. Eli saw the look and didn't wait. He grabbed the work order before Dylan could even finish his donut. "She needs it by the afternoon," Dylan muttered. "Good luck." Eli rolled up his sleeves. "We'll make it happen." "We?" Grant echoed from his corner. Eli nodded at the cat, who had jumped onto the workbench and was watching him work. "She's quality control." Loki let out a short, approving MRRP. Grant didn't smile, but he didn't not smile either. As the hours passed, the three of them fell into a quiet rhythm. Eli under the hood, Loki perched like a hawk, and Grant occasionally drifting by to hand Eli a part without being asked. No one spoke about it, but something about it felt easy. Like a song with no words they all somehow knew. Around 3 p.m., the van was done. The woman returned, wide-eyed with gratitude, and offered cash and cookies in equal measure. Loki took the latter with suspicious grace, nibbling at a piece of chocolate-free oatmeal. "Still don't like cats," Grant muttered as he accepted the cookies. "You don't have to like her," Eli said, tossing a wrench into the drawer with a metallic trunk. "But she's here now." That night, after the shop closed and the lights dimmed to a golden hum, Grant walked back inside to find Loki curled up in Eli's old hoodie by the radiator. She didn't flinch when he approached, just opened one eye, then closed it again, content. He stared at her for a long while. Then, almost without thinking, he bent down and laid a small wool blanket over her sleeping form. "Damn cat," he whispered. "What the hell are you doing to us?" The shop was closed, the tools silenced, the world outside reduced to crickets and distant highway sounds. Eli sat alone in the back room, hunched over a half-finished sandwich that he wasn't really eating. A greasy rag rested in his lap. The overhead bulb flickered every so often, like it couldn't make up its mind. Loki was curled nearby on a worn-out couch cushion, breathing softly. Her injured leg twitched in sleep, as if still running from something. Eli watched her for a while. Then, slowly, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded photo, creased, faded, the edges soft from too much handling. A young woman smiled back at him from the picture, hair in a messy ponytail, smudges of oil on her cheek. Her arms were around a teenage Eli, both of them leaning against an old Dodge truck with the hood popped open. She had the same eyes as him. Her name was Ray, his older sister, his best friend, his first teacher in engines and kindness. She died 3 years ago. One reckless driver, one wet road, one call he didn't answer in time. Eli blinked hard, rubbing the corner of his eye with his thumb. He remembered the way she laughed, always from her chest. The way she used to say, "Machines are like people. They break, but they always want to work again if you help them right." He hadn't touched that truck since. Eli leaned back in the chair, photo still in hand, eyes distant. "I ever tell you about her?" he said quietly, not to anyone in particular. Loki stirred, opened one eye, blinked. "She used to call me Grease Monkey," he said, lips twitching in a smile. "Taught me how to rebuild a carburetor before I could even parallel park." He chuckled once, then his voice softened. "She was everything good, and I wasn't there." Silence wrapped the room. Loki didn't meow, didn't purr. She just got up, limped to him slowly, and climbed into his lap like she knew exactly what needed to be done. Her small body was warm against his chest. Eli let out a breath he'd been holding for years. He leaned his head back against the wall, eyes closed, the photo still gripped in one hand, the cat in the other. Some wounds didn't heal, but maybe they stopped bleeding if someone sat beside them long enough. The morning rolled in heavy with mist, the kind that softened the edges of buildings and made the world feel like it was still deciding whether to wake up. Eli was already at the shop, sleeves rolled up and hands deep in the guts of a '99 Ford pickup. Grant leaned against the workbench, sipping black coffee from a dented thermos that had probably seen more oil spills than road trips. Loki was stationed at her usual post, atop the red Snap-on toolbox, tail flicking idly and one eye open, keeping score. "You missed a bolt," Grant said, nodding toward the alternator. "No, I didn't," Eli replied without looking up. "It's wedged, rusted in. I was letting it soak." Grant sipped again. "You ever think about going solo?" Eli paused. "What, like opening my own shop?" Grant shrugged. "You got the hands, the patience. You don't talk too much, which is a rare gift in this line of work." Eli smirked. "Takes money." "Sure does." The conversation drifted into silence. The buzz of a cicada hummed outside. Loki let out a low, grumbly meow, like she was annoyed by the lack of drama. Grant cracked his neck. "Where'd you learn to work like that?" "My sister," Eli said without hesitation. "She was a mechanic, better than me." Grant raised an eyebrow, surprised by how easily that answer came out. "She had a shop back in Austin, taught me everything. Used to race, too." "She's still running it?" Eli hesitated, then shook his head. "Nah, she passed a few years ago." Grant didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't reach for anything soft or sentimental. He just nodded, slow, respectful. "Cancer?" "No, car accident." Grant's face changed, just a flicker, the kind of expression you only catch if you're looking for it. "She was driving?" he asked. "No," Eli said quietly. "She was waiting at a light." They didn't speak for a while after that. Eli tightened the alternator bolt. The sound of the ratchet echoed like punctuation in the stillness. Grant cleared his throat. "I lost someone too. My kid. Years back." Eli glanced up. "Boy," Grant continued, "named Micah. Not even 10 yet. Pneumonia. Hit fast, hit hard." The air felt heavier now. Not uncomfortable, but sacred. Like a place neither of them usually visited, now shared by unspoken permission. "I didn't know," Eli said. Grant gave a small one-shouldered shrug. "People don't ask. Figured maybe I stopped talking about it long enough, it'd stop hurting. And? Grant's laugh was short and humorless. Nah, just hurts quieter now. Loki stretched, then dropped down from the toolbox with a soft thump. She walked between them, brushing against both legs like a diplomat closing a peace treaty. You know, Grant muttered, watching her limp away, I still don't like cats. Eli smirked. She still doesn't care. They both chuckled, just once, but it was enough. The truck's engine finally turned over with a rough purr, steady and alive. You ever think about staying? Grant asked. Eli didn't answer right away. He just looked around, at the oil-stained walls, the rattling lights, the smell of grease and coffee and possibility. Then he glanced at Loki, who had claimed a new perch beside the window, like a queen surveying her kingdom. Yeah, Eli said. I think maybe I am.
It was just after lunch when the stranger walked in. The garage door was wide open, warm air flowing through like a lazy river. A country ballad played low on the radio. Eli was under the hood of a silver Camry, Grant was in the back office pretending not to nap, and Loki was sprawled out on a clean patch of floor in a sunbeam, her injured leg curled protectively under her. Then came the sound of heels. Not boots. Not sneakers. Heels. Eli looked up and blinked. She was tall, maybe mid-30s, dressed too clean for a place like this. Hair tied up in a perfect ponytail, sunglasses perched on her head. She carried a glossy purse and the kind of confidence that came from giving orders, not taking them. Oh my gosh, she said, hands clasped in front of her chest. Is that the cat from the flyer? Eli wiped his hands on a rag. Flyer? I posted it a few days ago. She pulled out her phone and turned it around. A picture of Loki, grainy and a bit too zoomed in, was displayed on the screen, printed beneath it, injured as TRAY, looks hungry, please help. I've been looking for her everywhere, she said, stepping forward with her arms already out. I was going to take her to a rescue today. Loki sat up slowly, blinking, tail twitching once. Eli stepped between them, casual, but firm. She's not going anywhere, he said. The woman frowned. But, she's injured. She needs treatment. I've got a vet lined up. Anna Foster. We even have this little pink collar. She's being looked after. By a mechanic? She asked, clearly trying to soften the blow of her judgment with a polite smile. No offense, but... Offense taken. Grant emerged then, coffee in hand, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. She bothering the cat? The woman turned toward him. I'm trying to help. I care about animals. I volunteer. I've rescued 12 cats this year alone. She's not one of your 12, Grant said. She's ours. But she's limping. And she eats better than I do, Eli cut in. Loki, as if on cue, stood and slowly limped over to Eli's side, brushing her body along his leg before curling at his feet. She looked up at the woman with slow blinking, unapologetic indifference. She chose us, Eli said, quieter now. And if she ever wants to leave, she will. But it'll be her choice. The woman blinked, lips tightening, not used to being told no in any format. Finally, she sighed, frustrated but not angry. Fine. But if she ends up back on the street, I'll be back. Eli didn't say anything. He just knelt, gently stroked behind Loki's ear, and smiled as the cat leaned into the touch. The woman turned and left. Her heels echoed across the concrete, then faded entirely. Later that evening, Grant stood beside Eli by the garage door, watching the last of the sun settle behind the low hills. You handled that well, Grant said. She meant well. Just didn't understand. Still. You stood your ground. Eli didn't reply right away. He looked down at Loki, who was now curled up in a box full of clean shop rags, her breath even and slow. "I've had people try to take things from me before," he said quietly. "Not this time." Grant nodded. "Welcome to the family," he muttered. Eli looked at him. Grant took a sip of coffee. "I meant the cat." Eli smiled. "Sure you did." The flyer was Eli's idea. It was scribbled on the back of an old invoice at first: "Free checkups, Saturday. Bring your car. Bring your questions." Below it, in smaller handwriting, "Free cookies. 1 cat may supervise." Grant had grunted when he saw it. "You think people are gonna line up for a free engine inspection just because of a cat? She's got more charisma than both of us combined." He wasn't wrong. Saturday arrived with the smell of sun-warmed pavement and fresh coffee. The garage looked cleaner than it had in years. Dylan had even swept the corner behind the tire rack where an old mousetrap lived in silent judgment. By 10 a.m., the first car pulled up, a young couple with a baby in the back seat and questions about a weird knocking noise. Then came a retired schoolteacher with a classic Mustang. Then a single dad in a rusted-out Jeep who didn't trust mechanics but really wanted one to look at his brakes. And people kept coming. Loki, of course, was the unofficial greeter. She sat right at the edge of the shop, blinking like a furry oracle, tail swishing gently, accepting pets on her terms. Somehow, word had gotten out about the mechanic cat with a limp and an attitude. Kids came just to see her. One little girl with freckles brought a drawing she made, a shaky crayon version of Loki with a golden crown and a cape. "She's the queen of cars," she told Eli proudly. "She's got the attitude for it," Eli said, smiling. The hours passed in a blur of oil checks and laughter. Grant, despite himself, started to look different. He still grumbled when someone asked too many questions, but he also offered tips for fuel efficiency and fixed a loose battery cable for free. At one point, Eli caught him crouched near a boy with glasses, showing him how to use a tire pressure gauge. The boy listened with wide eyes. Loki sat right next to them, watching like she approved of the lesson. Eli stood off to the side and just watched. The garage wasn't buzzing like a business anymore. It was living. Full of chatter, of stories, of strangers becoming neighbors. A woman handed Loki a slice of turkey. A man asked Eli if they'd be open next Saturday too. And for the first time in a long time, Eli didn't feel like he was drifting through someone else's town. He felt like he belonged. Later that evening, after the last car pulled away and the last cookie was gone, Eli and Grant sat on the steps outside the shop. Loki lay across both their boots, dozing, her tail curled like a comma between them. "You know," Grant said, "this used to be my dad's place. He built it with his bare hands after the war. Always said a garage should be a place where people feel safer leaving than when they came in." Eli looked over, surprised. Grant rarely shared anything from that deep. "Well," Eli said, "today. I think he'd be proud." Grant didn't answer. Just raised his thermos in a quiet toast. Loki stretched and let out a soft, satisfied sigh, like she agreed. It started with silence. No soft thump of paws landing on the workbench. No yawn-meow combo echoing through the early morning garage. No slow blink from under the radiator shelf. Just nothing. Eli noticed it first. He walked in with a fresh pack of wet food tucked under his arm, whistling the same off-key tune he always did when he opened up. But the second his boots touched the concrete floor, he stopped. The blanket by the heater was empty. The water dish was untouched. Her name escaped his mouth like breath. Loki. He walked the perimeter of the shop, checked behind the tires, under the shelves, even climbed up the small ladder to the parts loft where she'd once napped through an entire alternator replacement. Still nothing. By the time Grant arrived, Eli had already walked the alley twice, calling her name in a low, desperate voice. Grant watched him for a beat, eyes narrowing. "She's probably out doing cat things," Grant said gruffly. "Cats wander. Not her." Grant didn't argue. He just rubbed his chin, glanced around the shop, and for the first time in a long time, looked worried. They spent the day half working, half watching the door. A little bell above the front entrance jingled every time someone walked in, and each time Eli looked up too fast, hoping. But it was never her. A customer. A delivery guy. A gust of wind. Not Loki. By dusk, Eli was pacing. His hands were black with grease he hadn't even bothered to wash off. She was limping. She wouldn't have gone far. "I'll check the lot across the street," Grant muttered, grabbing a flashlight. "I already did. I'll check again." They split up, one heading down the alley, the other across the overgrown fence line that bordered a junkyard of rusted-out appliances and forgotten cars. They called for her. They whistled. Eli even shook the tuna can like it was a magic charm. Nothing. When they finally reconvened, it was almost midnight. Both men stood in the soft glow of the shop's outdoor light, shoulders low. "I should have watched her more closely," Eli muttered. Grant shook his head. "She's not yours to control. Cats don't belong to us. They just choose to stay." "Yeah," Eli said softly. "And I need her to keep choosing us." Grant looked at him then. Really looked. The grease-smudged hands. The haunted eyes. The man who'd arrived a stranger and now felt like the shop's heartbeat. And maybe Loki was part of what connected it all. Grant placed a firm hand on Eli's shoulder. "She'll come back." But neither of them believed it fully. Inside the shop, everything felt wrong. Too still. Too empty. The blanket by the heater looked like it was waiting. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Loki wasn't there to fill the quiet. The storm came in fast, unexpected, hard, and full of rage. It hadn't been forecasted. One moment the sky was lazy blue, the next it was bruised charcoal, thunder growling low like an old dog. By evening, rain was pelting the roof of the shop so hard it sounded like gravel. Water trickled down the garage entrance, pooling into puddles and dragging little bits of leaf and dirt in with it. Eli sat on the office couch, legs bouncing, eyes locked on the dark window. Every gust of wind made him flinch. "I should have looked harder," he said for the third time that hour. Grant sat opposite him, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "You did look. Not enough." The rain answered with another hard slap against the siding. Loki had been gone for 2 days. They didn't hear her at first, not over the storm. But then came a sound low and rough, like a cough wrapped in a cry. Eli was on his feet before his mind caught up. Another yowl, closer this time. Sharp. Familiar. He threw open the side door just in time for lightning to split the sky, and there she was. Soaked. Shivering. Limp more pronounced. Covered in flecks of mud and something sticky. But her eyes, those wild, defiant eyes, were locked on his. She was dragging something in her mouth. A piece of cloth. Torn. Bright red. Eli dropped to his knees. "Loki, hey, hey." She dropped the cloth at his feet and collapsed into him with a rasping purr. Her body was trembling, breath shallow but steady. Grant appeared behind him. Holy hell. Eli picked her up carefully, holding her to his chest as she shivered against the warmth. Rain still hammered the pavement around them, but none of it touched her now. He carried her inside like she was made of glass. Wrapped in a towel, Loki lay curled on the counter beside the radiator. Her fur fluffed awkwardly, eyes closed, breathe evening out. Eli examined the red cloth. It was part of an old bandana. Faded, but strangely familiar. Then he remembered. The man with the Jeep. The one who didn't trust mechanics. He always wore a red bandana around his wrist. Said it reminded him of his daughter who'd passed. He'd mentioned his car had been broken into a few days back. A woman had asked him for help in the alley, then ran off with his bag. Said he never got it back. You think she followed someone? Grant asked. Eli nodded slowly. Maybe even tried to bring it back. She found her way home. In a storm. Hurt. Dragging this. Eli looked down at her, completely stunned. She's not just a cat. Grant didn't answer. He didn't have to. Later that night, Eli sat on the floor beside the radiator, eyes heavy. Loki, bandaged and clean, was curled against him, her breathing soft and even. You came back, he whispered. She didn't move, but her paw twitched and landed on his boot, like a small anchor. He smiled, eyes closing, heart full in that aching, unfamiliar way only love can bring. She was more than a stray now. She was home. It started with a photo. Dylan, the youngest of the crew, had snapped it the morning after the storm. Loki, curled in Eli's lap near the radiator, her bandaged legs stretched out, eyes half closed in defiance of everything she'd survived. He posted it online with the caption. This cat dragged herself back in a storm to return something a thief stole. We don't deserve her. By lunch, the post had over 2,000 likes. By the next morning, it had gone viral, at least, in the town's small way. The diner downtown printed it and taped it to their pie case. The hardware store put out a bowl of water labeled, for Loki's cousins. A third-grade class made thank you cards addressed to Loki the Brave. At first, Eli found it ridiculous. She's just a cat, he muttered, watching a woman outside the shop take a selfie with Loki sleeping in the window. Grant shook his head. That's not just anything. She limped through the rain and dragged back a bandana. That doesn't make her a hero. Doesn't it? Grant asked. Most people don't even return grocery carts anymore. Eli had no answer. A reporter came by midweek. Local paper. Kind smile. Notebook in hand. I'd love to write a piece, she said. Maybe focus on how you took her in, nursed her back. A mechanic and a stray, it's got heart. Eli hesitated. Loki was asleep on a folded towel, unaware of the world making her into something mythic. She's not a mascot, Eli said. And this shop, it's not a charity story. The reporter nodded. Understood. But maybe people just want to believe in something again. Even if it's small. Especially if it's small. Grant grunted. Let her write it, kid. Maybe it gets someone to stop and think. So Eli agreed. The article ran the next Sunday with a photo of Loki beside a socket wrench and a quote from Eli. She didn't need saving. She just needed someone to stop walking past. People started showing up. Not just for car repairs, but with donations of food, bedding, even a tiny nameplate that read, Loki, head of security. Eli installed it above her favorite perch. One afternoon, the little girl with the crayon crown returned, this time with her father. She clutched a small envelope in her hands. It's for you, she said shyly, handing it to Eli. Inside was a note, written in looping, misspelled words. Dear Loki. I told my mom you got hurt but came back anyway. She said that's what brave means. I think you're brave and Eli is too. Love, Ava. Eli blinked a few times too fast, then crouched to meet her eyes. Thanks, Ava. I'll read it to her later. The girl beamed. Her father, gruff, tired eyes, nodded with the weight of someone who'd felt seen. That night, as the shop settled into its familiar rhythm of ticking engines and creaking signs, Eli sat beside Loki, brushing his fingers gently through her fur. You turned this place into something else, he said softly. Didn't even mean to. She didn't respond. Just curled tighter, one paw resting against the edge of his boot like a final period on a sentence only she could write. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. No return address. Just a plain white envelope taped to the front door, flapping in the breeze. Grant found it first. He stared at it for a long moment before peeling it off the glass and handing it to Eli without a word. Eli unfolded the paper, his brow furrowing as he read. To whom it may concern. I have visited your shop and seen the cat wandering freely. This is a place of machinery, oil, and danger. It is not safe for animals. Nor for your customers. If you won't remove her, I will report the matter to the health department. Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Grant waited for Eli's reaction. But Eli just stood still, the letter trembling slightly in his hand. She's never hurt anyone, Eli said finally. Never gotten in the way. That don't matter, Grant replied, voice low. All it takes is one person with enough paperwork and no heart. Loki, unaware, was curled in her usual spot by the bay window, tail twitching in her sleep. Eli's jaw clenched. They don't know her. They don't see her. No. They don't, Grant said. But I do. The tension hung in the air like humidity. Customers came and went. Most smiled at Loki, greeted her like an old friend. Some brought treats. One brought a handmade collar with tiny embroidered gears on it. But Eli couldn't relax. He started glancing toward the door every time it opened, expecting someone in a buttoned-up shirt with a clipboard. A health inspector. A city official. Someone ready to reduce his life to a policy violation. You think they'll really report it? He asked Grant over lunch. Grant shrugged. Probably. If they haven't already. And if they come. Then they come. But what if they make us choose? Grant looked up sharply, grease still on his fingers. Then we don't. Eli paused. What? Grant set down his sandwich. We don't choose. This place is what it is because of her. Hell, because of you. They take her out, might as well get the place too. It was the closest thing to a full-blown declaration Grant had ever made. Eli didn't reply. But something in his chest, something tight, long numb, began to loosen. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the smell of warm metal lingered, Eli sat beside Loki, fingers resting gently on her back. You're not just a cat, he whispered. You're proof that broken things still matter. He looked down at the letter again, then tore it in half, then in quarters, dropping the pieces into the bin. We're not going anywhere. As if she understood, Loki stirred, lifted her head, and rested it on his arm. Some families were built by blood. Others by choice. And some, by one limping paw print at a time. They showed up at 10:17 a.m. on a Thursday. 2 people. One in a city-issued windbreaker, clipboard in hand. The other wore an all-business expression and carried a laminated badge that said, Municipal Health Compliance, Field Unit. Grant was tightening a fuel injector. Eli was halfway under a Dodge Ram. Loki was curled on her usual towel near the back, ears twitching at the unfamiliar footsteps. You Grant Nichols? The clipboard asked. Grant wiped his hands slowly on a rag. Depends. Who's asking? Health Department. We've had a complaint about unsafe animal presence on a commercial premises. Eli slid out from under the truck, heart already pounding. She's not loose, he said. She doesn't interfere with anything. We're not here to debate that, sir. Just need to take a look and assess the conditions. The clipboard's tone was clipped, efficient. Like they'd done this before and didn't care how many hearts broke doing it. Loki didn't move when they approached. She just sat up slowly, one leg tucked beneath her, eyes clear, calm, undeniably present. The second inspector frowned. She's injured. She's healing, Eli replied. The 2 officers exchanged a glance. This is still a place of machinery, the clipboard said. Technically, an animal present without enclosure or clear sanitary protocol is a... Excuse me? A voice cut across the garage. Everyone turned. A woman in a bright yellow coat stood at the edge of the open bay. Next to her, a small crowd had begun gathering, faces Eli recognized. Customers. Neighbors. Even Ava, the little girl with the crayon drawings, held her father's hand as they stepped forward. "We read the article," the woman said. "This cat saved someone. Came back in a storm. Hasn't hurt a soul. You gonna shut down a whole shop over compassion?" More voices joined in. "She keeps my son calm when we come in. She's half the reason I trust this place now. My kids made her a bed." Grant raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms, letting the scene play out like a man who had no intention of stepping in unless it was to hand someone a wrench, or a shovel. Eli stood stunned. The clipboard officer shifted uncomfortably. "We're not here to start trouble." "You already did," someone said. The other inspector cleared their throat. "Look. All we're saying is, there are guidelines. But, this doesn't seem like a danger. More like a mascot." Grant smirked. "Head of security." Loki let out a quiet, almost amused MRP, like she agreed. The clipboard finally exhaled. "We'll make a note. Suggest voluntary signage. Maybe keep her in the back during peak hours. Nothing official." And just like that, they turned and left, followed by the watchful eyes of a small crowd ready to riot for a cat. That evening, Grant taped a new sign to the garage door. "Yes, the cat works here. No, she doesn't bite. She's got more tenure than you." Eli stared at it and laughed for a long time. Inside, Loki basked in a patch of sunlight, queen, survivor, symbol. Not just protected. Chosen. It came in the form of an email. The subject line was bland enough: opportunity, position opening, Austin. But the sender's name hit Eli like a socket wrench to the chest. Marcellin Gwynn, Ray's old friend. Their family's friend. A woman who'd once called him Little Grease Monkey, while sneaking him cans of root beer and engine parts too expensive to buy. He clicked it open. "Eli. I hope you're doing well. I heard about what happened with Ray. I never said it before, but I miss her too. I know it's been a few years, but I've just taken over the lease on her old shop. I'm rebuilding the business from the ground up. A new name. A new team. I thought of you right away. If you want a fresh start, or maybe a way to finish what she began, come home. We could use your hands. But more than that, we could use your heart. No pressure. Just think about it. M." Eli didn't answer right away. He stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard, until Loki jumped into his lap without warning, curling into a soft loaf and looking up at him with curious golden eyes. "You remember her," he murmured. "Don't you?" She blinked. That night, he didn't sleep much. He stood out by the fence with a mug of cooling coffee, the sky hanging low with the weight of something unsaid. The town lights flickered softly in the distance. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere else, a life he once wanted was asking him to return. Inside, the garage was quiet. Familiar. Home. Loki had fallen asleep in her blanket nest near the radiator. Grant sat in the corner with his feet on a stool, pretending not to snore. Eli looked at them both. The noise of tools. The smell of oil. The comfort of a cat who came back from a storm and never left again. And suddenly, the decision didn't feel simple, or distant. It felt like standing at a crossroads you didn't know you'd ever reach. The next morning, Eli told Grant about the email. Grant didn't say much. Just leaned against the bench and listened, arms crossed, brow furrowed. She's offering me a full partner role, Eli said. Own ours. My sister's old place. Grant nodded slowly. Sounds like a chance. Yeah. You think you take it? Eli looked down at his hands. They were calloused, stained, solid. I don't know. Grant looked at him then, not with suspicion or pressure, but something steadier. Something almost paternal. You got time to figure it out, he said. Just, don't leave without saying goodbye. That's all I ask. Eli nodded, throat tight. Later that day, Loki followed him outside. No meows. No nudging. Just walked beside him like a shadow, quiet, constant, present. Like she already knew what he hadn't admitted to himself yet. The shop opened like any other day. Grant was already muttering about the price of parts before the sun had fully risen. Dylan had dropped a box of brake pads and blamed the shelf. Loki was sunbathing in her usual spot, tail twitching contentedly with zero regard for human chaos. And Eli stood at the door, holding a printed plane ticket in his hands. Austin. One way. Departure in 4 days. He hadn't told anyone he'd bought it. Not even Loki. He'd wanted to be sure. To feel the way Ray used to describe when she rebuilt an engine and knew, just knew, it would run before she even turned the key. But no matter how many times he looked at that ticket, that feeling never came. That night, after the others left and the shop dimmed into amber hush, Eli sat beside the radiator. Loki curled up beside him, her paw draped over his boot. I thought going back would fix something, he said quietly. Maybe finish the story. Loki didn't stir. Just breathed. I think, he hesitated, then let the words come. I think the story finished itself the day you walked into this place. Or maybe the day I stayed when I didn't have to. He reached into his pocket, unfolded the ticket, and stared at it a long while. Then he tore it in half. And then again. He dropped the pieces into the waste bin beside the workbench, the final flutter of paper like a sigh through the quiet. The next morning, Grant found him already under the hood of a rusted Buick. Figured you'd be packing by now, he grunted. Eli didn't look up. Nah. Grant leaned against the doorframe. You sure? I was running toward the past. But turns out, I was already where I needed to be. Grant nodded once, slowly. No big speech? Eli asked, smirking. You want a speech? Grant said. Get elected. They both laughed. By noon, someone had tacked a new photo to the corkboard in the back office. It was Loki, crown made of zip ties on her head, sitting proudly in a cardboard box labeled manager. Beneath it, someone had written. She didn't need saving. She saved us. As the days passed, the shop found its rhythm again. But something had shifted. Customers stayed longer. The little girl came by every Saturday. Someone even left a plaque one morning that read, Grant's Auto Repair. Home of honest engines and one legendary cat. And in the center of it all, between the creak of tools, the hum of life, and the quiet of understanding, was Loki. Still limping. Still ruling. Still home.